Hey, so welcome back, and let's cover this last lecture, this last part of the lecture on biosphere with this video number 4 on biological extinction. And we'll see that in fact extinction is part of life, and it's what has helped in some way life to evolve and becoming more and more complex. But let's see what is in fact behind those biological extinction that has happened over the different part of life history on the planet. So what do we call first an extinction of species? An extinction of species is when we are losing permanently that species from the surface of the earth, when there is no more individuals on that planet living. And so extinction is really permanent, such as the dodo that you can see in this coming from the cartoon of the Ice Age. It's natural that extinction happen. And in fact, there is what we call a background extinction rate, which kind of measure, give us an idea of how many species we're losing every year or over a specific period of time. And so it's estimated that for 1 million species living on the planet, we are losing one species every year. So remember that we say that, let's just simplify. We say that we have 10 possible million species on the planet. That means that more or less we expect to have 10 species being lost every year on the planet. It's between 10 to 20 species, more or less. So this is what we call the background extinction, which is in fact the natural process being done by nature. And in fact, if we count, and scientists have made that, if you count how many species, what is the contribution of the species on the planet right now versus what has happened, in fact, we figure out that 99% of all the species that has lived on the planet has gone extinct at this point. We are kind of dealing only with the last 1% of it. And I show you a previous example from a cartoon, but recently we observed also the species that has gone extinct, such as the Chinese river dolphin in 2006 or the Costa Rica golden toad in 1989. For those examples, the tricky part is to know if those extinction comes from a natural cause or if it's being caused by human. But that's something we'll just come back in a little bit. Keeping on the extinction of species, we talked about a usual natural extinction, but there have been a couple of events on the planet, in fact, 5 of them, where between 25, so a quarter, to 95% of all the species were wiped out from the planet by some specific catastrophic event. Of course, you may think directly about the dinosaurs, which is the most popular one, that we assume they got extinct because of a meteorite that crushed the planet, in particular on the peninsula of Yucatan in Mexico. And also, in fact, there was a pretty intensive volcanism activity happening at that time. However, the dinosaurs extinction is not the major one that Earth has known on its planet. What we've seen is this is part of a natural cycle of life, because every time there was a major extinction happening, in fact, life after that has kind of exploded again, bloomed again. It's like if you are cleaning up the space to make new species enjoying that space and kind of blooming. So we always see a biodiversity increase a couple of thousands of millions of years after an extinction happened. So it's really giving the opportunity for new species to thrive, such as, for example, mammals. Mammals existed in the time of the dinosaurs, but most of the mammals were in the size of rats or mouse or very small. But with the disappearance of dinosaurs, mammals could suddenly took that space that was free. And mammals starting to diversify, becoming bigger up to the point that we know today. So as I mentioned, one of the major, and I think the most popular extinction that has happened on Earth is the dinosaurs one, which is also the last extinction that happened 65 million years ago, but it's not the major one. If we look at geological record, in particular the fossil record, we have 5 mass extinction that has been recorded. That has happened on Earth since the last 500 million years. We have, in fact, about 450 million years ago, the Ordovician extinction that happened mostly when life was concentrated into the sea. Then we have the Devonian extinction, about 370 million years ago, again happening mostly undersea. Then the Permian extinction happened about 250 million years ago. This is the most catastrophic one, the bigger one, mostly happening on the sea, but also on the first major species that were starting to develop little by little on land. Then we have the Triassic extinction happening around 200 million years ago. And finally, the fifth one, the Cretaceous extinction, which is in fact where the dinosaurs disappeared. At this point, not without going too much into more biology, I'm just asking you, do you think that human could potentially be a cause of mass extinction? Especially, I mean, think about removing 25% at least of the species on the planet. Well, unfortunately, it can be the case. And scientists are more and more sure about the fact that human is in fact creating right now the number 6 of all the mass extinction. We've been seeing from this graph what is the natural rate of background extinction. Remember, one species for every 1 million 1 million species on the planet. That was a number. So we're in fact between 0.1 and 1, to be more or less. In the recent past, over the past decades, we've seen that these numbers go about 100 species. So we're at least multiplying by 100 the number of species that has gone extinct over the last 200 years, more or less. And model, so prediction, suggests that we might in fact multiply it within the next century or so, multiply that by even 10 times. So from a difference with the natural background, we're about 1,000 to 10,000 species extinct per year. So we're multiplying this rate by about 1,000 to 10,000 by the end of this century. The difference with the previous mass extinction, those mass extinction happened over a long period of time. Even though there was a meteorite happening, those dinosaurs were not killed from one day to the other. They took thousands of years to disappear little by little from the surface of the Earth because of the change in the environment. We are removing species at a rate that was never been seen before. And the majority of the species that tend to be impacted are almost every species. Of course, the first one tend to be mammals and vertebrates because they tend to be bigger species. And so since we are taking their space, particularly removing their habitats, well, they don't have place to live and they unfortunately die. But also in other vertebrates, amphibians, fish, snakes, etc., reptiles, by our activity, all of them tend to be disappearing at very higher rate than what should be the background extinction. So human is really at kind of at the beginning of a new mass extinction, the number 6. Okay, I kind of already explained why much larger species can be usually more vulnerable to extinction compared to smaller species. Think also, I mean, I spoke about habitats, but think also about the food web and how much food a large species need versus a small one and where they get access to that food. So I will just end up on this dramatic video, and which is in fact a documentary that was diffused on the Discovery Channel. And just on this note, also that just in a couple of human generation, I mean, less than 200 years, we've been kind of declining the biodiversity in the biosphere by so much that never happened in the past, that in fact, the future generation will be in fact impacting with no matter what. They will be dealing with less biodiversity than we do. And you might think, oh, why we should care? But well, remember about the ecosystem services. A lot of the biodiversity interaction create by ecosystem services that we in fact are using for free, such as pollination. And we already have issues with bees, and we are struggling to find solutions for that. So this is not in fact good for the future if we keep in fact adding so much pressure on the biodiversity, pushing for its own decline. And I will end up with this video.
There's been 5 major extinctions in the history of the planet. There's the Ordovician, the Devonian, the Permian, there's the Triassic, Jurassic, and then the KT extinction, the one that killed the dinosaurs. It's very difficult to comprehend in deep time 4.6 billion years of Earth's history. So if you take, say, the history of the Earth and try to squeeze it into a 24-hour clock, where does man fit on that clock? A few seconds before midnight. That's it. We're the new kid on the block.
What we're seeing now is called the Anthropocene, the new epoch. Anthropocene means the time of humans. It's when the impact of humans is leaving itself as a mark in the fossil record of the future. 65 million years ago, there was an asteroid that struck and caused the dinosaurs to go extinct.
When it comes to the sixth extinction event, we have no problem identifying the cause. Humanity has become the asteroid.
We're on that tipping point now, where it's either too late or just the beginning of a movement.
Right, and with that, we are done with the topic of biosphere, and I wish you a good rest of your day. See you later. Bye, everyone.